What if Mace Windu was reborn with all of his memories? Let's start the story on Coruscant, the night it all went wrong. Mace soared through the Coruscant skies after his entire torso was scorched with Sith lightning. Life was leaving him, he could feel it, but inside him was rage. Pure hot rage focused towards Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi he'd never trusted and had betrayed them most when it counted. He'd failed. His life's work to lead the Jedi Order and protect the galaxy against the Sith has failed. These were his last thoughts in his final moments, as he lost consciousness and soared towards the surface of Coruscant. It all went black. Windu expecting to wake up in the afterlife, not sure what the Force had next for him. But he opened his eyes, and what he saw was familiar. A room inside the Jedi Temple, the sparsely spaced furniture and meditation sofa, with the plain walls that he always liked. He went for a walk, seeing many familiar faces, yet younger than he expected. He looked at a window and realized he too was younger, his face representing himself when he was still a Padawan. Windu was confused what games the Force were playing, but he didn't think much of it, believing this must be what the Force had planned for him in the afterlife. But it wasn't the afterlife, and Mace slowly started to realize that. This went on for days, and finally, after over a week passed, Windu realized this wasn't the afterlife. This was in fact reality, and the Force had given him a second chance to live his life. Windu thinks deeply about the future and the past. He now has the chance to change the events of the future. Anakin, the Sith, the Clone War, everything, because he knows what happens. Well, most of it. During this time, he tested his strength and realized he had retained his power, and therefore knew in this time, his days as a Padawan would soon be over. He started coming up with his plan and putting it in place. He slowly revealed that he was stronger than he was, which caught the attention of his master, Silent Mir, and after a few weeks, he sat his Jedi trials and graduated as a Jedi Knight. This was good, as now Mace had more freedom. He'd come up with a good plan on where to move from here, and decided that dealing with the Sith must be his first priority. During his time on the Jedi Council, Windu found out that the Sith had been behind everything. The Naboo crisis, the Clone War, the corruption in the Senate, and finally, the manipulation of the Chosen One. And to improve the galaxy and stop this again, dealing with the Sith must be his first priority. He had started to research Palpatine a lot. He had been selected as Naboo Senator only 2 years prior, and before that, he had only carried minor positions in Naboo's governmental system. Yet somehow at age 32, he had ascended to the position of Senator. Strange, and Windu knew he must have used his Sith influence to do this. After a few more months of plotting, planning, and investigation, Windu travels to Naboo with a group of 6 Jedi Knights and Masters, on the illusion that they're going on an expedition, that Windu's research had located an ancient Jedi site in the countryside of Naboo. However, this was all a scheme. Windu suspected that Palpatine had a hideout somewhere on Naboo. He'd learned all he could about the Palpatine family and their vast collection of real estate, but what shocked him the most was when he learned Palpatine's entire family had been mysteriously murdered when the boy was 20 years old. He dug further to find that Palpatine owned an isolated property in the less desirable countryside land on Naboo, and determined that this house must contain some significance and may be the hideout he's looking for. He and the Jedi locate it and enter. It looked inconspicuous at first, but Windu sensed there was more to it, as he used the Force to move the bookcase in the study aside to reveal a hidden passage to a secret dungeon below. In the dungeon was what Windu was looking for, a Sith hideout, scrolls, artifacts, holocrons, and even lightsabers. Together they started gathering everything, but this isn't what Windu really wanted. He knew Palpatine was on the planet, and would have been notified that they were in his hideout, and now he would be coming for them. He wouldn't be able to resist it. 7 somewhat weak Jedi, and a fresh knight, Mace Windu. But little did Palpatine know, Windu was really one of the strongest in the Order, who had beaten him before. An hour into the session, the Jedi all felt it. The hate, the anger, the cold, but most of all, the power. Palpatine burst through the entrance, like a phoenix emerging from ash, his lightsaber crimson and ignited, whilst his hood covered his face. Within a second, he took down 2 Jedi, Inevitable losses, Windu thought, as he ignited his purple blade and blocked Palpatine's onslaught. The Sith Lord had a plan of attack. He would make his way through the Jedi one by one, but he hit a block. He expected the young 22-year-old, fresh Jedi Knight Windu would be one of the easiest, but he was putting up a fight, and his power was only increasing. Palpatine defeated 2 more of the Jedi, but Mace's Vapid was in full force. He pounced on Palpatine. This time his opponent was younger and less powerful, and so he disarmed the Sith and pushed him back against the far wall with the Force, disorientating the Sith Lord and held him in place, while the other 2 Jedi grabbed him, pinned him to the ground, and put electro cuffs on him. Windu had won. This time he'd been able to arrest Palpatine with no interruptions. Together, Windu and the remaining Jedi take Palpatine as well as his Sith artifacts back to the Jedi Temple. When Windu returned, he was hailed as a hero. He had single-handedly discovered the Sith had returned, defeated and captured them in one go. In his arrogance, Windu accepted the praise and Palpatine was taken to the Jedi's prison. Windu was extremely happy. He'd done it, taken out Palpatine early before he could initiate his plans. The Sith were gone, and now the galaxy could prosper how he wanted. However, Windu had forgotten something as part of his calculations. In the original timeline, Palpatine was Darth Sidious, the Sith Master. However, in this timeline, Palpatine was still the Sith Apprentice, and the Sith Master, Darth Plagueis, was alive and active. Plagueis was distraught at Palpatine's capture. He started coming up with plans to free him, but knew it wouldn't be possible. He was deep inside the Jedi Temple, so there was no way of getting to him. Palpatine would have to bide his time, and when Plagueis purged the Jedi, he would finally set his apprentice free. But in the meantime, he had to find a new one. He searched for months until he found the right candidate. Jarek Vantos, a Corellian civil servant with deep aspirations of power to climb up the political ladder. This is what Plagueis needed, as he still hoped to enter politics and knew this would be key for his plan. He took Vantos under his wing and trained him in the dark side of the Force. He wasn't as powerful as Palpatine, but he had potential, and furthermore was skilled in politics. 10 years pass by, and Plagueis completes his Sith training, as well as manipulating events until he's elected to become the senator for Corellia. Corellia was also important in Plagueis' plans, the galaxy's largest industrial shipyard, which will play an active role in the war and his empire to come. However, on the other side, after these 10 years, Mace started to have some concerns. He believed with the Sith gone, the galaxy would prosper, the Senate would fix itself, and thus, all would be resolved. But this was not the case. Corruption swelled in the Senate, unrest in the Outer Rim was still at an all-time high, and Darth Plagueis was making his moves. It's now Windu started to realize that maybe Palpatine wasn't the only Sith, that there was another, his master, who potentially is more powerful and dangerous than Palpatine. But Mace puts his thoughts aside, as the time has come. The time he's waited for, his revenge. The year is 40 BBY, and Anakin Skywalker has been born. Windu goes back to Tatooine, where Anakin had been born. He follows the Force to find and enter his home in the middle of the night. He walked into the sand hut, and his anger rises. Finally, Anakin Skywalker is here, the one he hates the most in all the galaxy. He recognizes his eyes and pulled out his lightsaber. He's ready to kill him. He planned to do this for decades and get his revenge. He ignites his lightsaber. The time is now. He raises it into the air, but as he goes to bring his saber down, it doesn't move. At the moment it was upon him, he couldn't do it. Mace stares at the baby's eyes. This isn't the Anakin Skywalker he knew. This is an innocent child. He can't bring himself to end this life, to break the Jedi code and let the darkness take over. This is exactly what Anakin did and couldn't bring himself to repeat the mistakes. Mace paused and decided to change his outlook on the situation. He's been given a unique opportunity to take Anakin with him back to the Jedi Temple and train him himself into being the Jedi he should have been, without the past of slavery, hatred, and fear. The next morning, after a long conversation with Shmi, she agreed to allow Mace to take Anakin with him, and he brings baby Skywalker back to the Jedi Temple. Windu brings Anakin in front of the council, proclaiming he's found a boy born to a mother with no father, with a midichlorian count of over 20,000. The council couldn't believe it, as a few deemed Anakin could be the chosen one. Windu raised his concerns that he believed the Sith may not have been defeated, and thus, Anakin might have been granted to them to bring balance and defeat the Sith once and for all. The council agreed, and granted Windu the permission to train him when the time came. 12 years go by, and in this time, the Sith were making their moves. Plagueis had facilitated the construction of the clone army 2 years ago, and Jarek Vantos was increasing his stance in the Senate. He was probably in the top 20 list for influential senators, but he still had a long way to go. However, what Plagueis didn't expect is that Windu knew about the clone army. He started training Anakin when he was 10 years old, and when he was finally 12, together they went to Kamino and found the Kaminoans 2 years into growing the clone army. Through this, Mace revealed the truth to the Senate and Jedi of what the Kaminoans were doing. There were heavy investigations into this, why Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas had ordered the clone army, or rather, why someone may have ordered it under his name. The Senate and Jedi both got heavily involved in this, but together came to the agreement to decommission the production of the clones, as this wasn't legal under Republic law. Plagueis couldn't believe it. He didn't know how his plans had been foiled once again, but the fact that it was Jedi Master Mace Windu again raised some suspicions. Mace trained Anakin for 8 more years. When Anakin went to Ilum with his master, he also received a purple kyber crystal, the combination of red and blue. This pleased Windu and made him very proud, as with this, he believed was the first step in ensuring Anakin would turn out okay in this timeline. Anakin's power only flourished under Windu as he became an extremely powerful Jedi. Mace would teach Anakin his own personal variant of Form 7 Vapart, which allowed the user to channel a Darksider's energy through himself in order to render the Darkside useless. It turns a Sith power against them, and no doubt will be beneficial to Anakin in the future. Anakin mastered lightsaber combat quickly, and Windu focused heavily on Force powers, molding the raw power Anakin possessed so he could focus it and control it with precision. When Anakin was 19, Windu couldn't believe how powerful he had become, far stronger than in the original timeline, and potentially the most powerful in the Order. This was due to Anakin growing up in the temple, but also due to Windu's tutelage, as Mace's own nature, his slight arrogance, but desire for the greater good, lining up well with Anakin. Together they were a force to be reckoned with, and Windu believed he had trained Anakin to the best of his ability, that he wouldn't betray the Jedi Order again. During this time, Plagueis spent most of his time at his laboratory on Sojourn, coming up with his backup plan, whilst his apprentice Vantos rose to the position of Vice Chancellor in the Senate, as well as being the most promising candidate for Supreme Chancellor at the next election, when Bail Organa's final term ends. Plagueis was a master of Sith alchemy from a scientific point of view, and after years of planning and experiments, he discovered his backup plan for destroying the Jedi Order, a Jedi virus. A virus that would attack the midichlorians inside someone's body until the point of death. His early experiments failed, but slowly after making subtle changes to the genetic code of the virus, he had his first success on a Lothrat from Lothal. He tried the virus on many different species of animals, but he had difficulty crossing it over to sentient beings. There was something about the conscious body that rejects the virus, but he believed soon enough he could overcome this limitation. However, back on Coruscant, Windu knew something wasn't right in the Force. He meditated deeply on this together with Anakin, as there had been many reports of Jedi going missing recently with no trace to follow. This is in fact Plagueis capturing Jedi to use as lab rats for his Jedi virus, but Windu starts to take notice, and he and Anakin believe this is the Sith making their final move. They've been dormant since the clone army bust, and the dark side is rising. Windu is now on the council, and he requests permission for he and Anakin to investigate the missing Jedi, and they are granted this. First they investigated the disappearance of Roran Korob, an Ithorian Jedi. He was deep undercover, investigating the Black Sun, and they managed to track down his ship on Lothal, its last known location. They checked the records in the ship, and Korob had documented that the Black Sun was getting involved in the biological trade, specifically showing records of them buying DNA samples from rare species, including Vorskar and Anzanti. This confused Mace and Anakin, but what stood out to Windu was that these species were resistant to the Force. They had a trail and decided to investigate Aayla Secura next on the Bith homeworld, who was investigating the illegal use of biological weapons before her disappearance. The Bith were an extremely advanced scientific race who always pushed the boundaries. Secura's last known location was a factory inside the industrial complex outside the main city. Anakin and Windu visited the site, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was a normal genetics lab, and nothing seemed out of place. They looked at the computer logs, which showed regular shipments to an address on Sojourn, and decided that was their next location. The address was for a private estate secluded in the mountains, far from public settlements. It was protected with high walls, private security, and stealth systems. But of course, Anakin and Mace bypassed it. They got into the estate and through the concealed lifts and accessed a lab built deep underground beneath the main villa. The elevator down opened to reveal the lab, sterile with smooth Durasteel walls. There were even multiple research chambers dedicated to a branch of study, genetics, physiology, cybernetics, and experimentation. But Anakin and Windu sensed something different with this lab. They sensed the dark side. It reminded Windu of Palpatine's hideout on Naboo, and the two Jedi turned to each other, believing they had just found the hideout of the Sith, and in fact, they were correct. They continued searching, finding advanced cloning tanks, biomechanisms, and midichlorian analysis machines. Many species here were used for experiments: Salamiri, Vorskir, and even a Bith male, whom they could sense the dark side from. But what they found at the end shocked them. A genetic analysis room containing the two Jedi, Roron Korob and Aayla Secura, who'd gone missing. They could sense Roron had passed, but could still sense Secura was alive. They entered her cell and shook her awake, asking if she was alright, but Secura coughed slowly, telling them that they had to act fast, that he was successful and was heading to Coruscant right away. Anakin and Windu look at each other, confused, asking Secura what she means. Who's going where? And Secura tells them, the Sith Lord. He's finished making his weapon to use against the Jedi and is going there now. Secura muttered her last words, passing away with her final breath, and the Jedi leave instantly with her warning. They arrive back on Coruscant in the council chambers, and Windu starts detailing what they found and the warning Aayla Secura gave them, until they all sense it through the Force at the same time. It's like a bomb through the Force went off, the dark side suddenly speaking with an intense fury. Everyone in the council felt it as they looked outside the window to see that a yellow substance had been released into the atmosphere of Coruscant and was descending from the sky. Plagueis had detonated his Jedi virus on Coruscant. Windu realizes it instantly and starts telling the council that it must be the Sith, it must be his weapon. But it's too late. Mid-sentence, all the council members start choking and gasping for air as they drop to the floor. However, Anakin was unaffected and simply watched the situation unfold, confused. He made eye contact with Windu and decides to focus his Force energy into all of them, keeping them all from death. However, the strain of this was too much and cut it off to focus only on Windu. He knelt down to his master, asking what he should do, who told Anakin he is the chosen one. He doesn't know why the virus isn't affecting him, but now is the moment he's been waiting for. The Sith has set the virus off and will come to finish off the Jedi, and Anakin must defeat them. And with that, Windu lost consciousness. Anakin could sense everyone was still alive, but it wouldn't be long before the effects of the virus were irreversible and there was no saving them. He had to act now. Anakin rushed out of the council chambers and through the temple, past the unconscious bodies of his fellow Jedi. When he reached the foyer, he could sense it, the dark side, and at the entrance stood two beings who ignited their crimson blades. Anakin does the same with his purple, and notices something interesting about the Sith. They both had masks connected to a gas tank located on their belt line, and Anakin realizes this must be how the virus isn't affecting them, and therefore they have a cure. If Anakin defeats them and gets hold of it, he can disperse it through the temple's ventilation system and save the Jedi Order. The Sith rushed forward at Anakin. Plagueis was slightly nervous. He had of course heard of Anakin and his power, but expected the virus to take him out with the rest. This really was the duel of the fates. Jarek Vanto lunged first, putting Anakin on the back foot, but Skywalker easily parried his strikes and went to cut his saber in half, until Plagueis threw a boulder, forcing him to back away. Plagueis started conjuring 4 spells and hurling them at Anakin, keeping him at a distance while Jarek attacked with his lightsaber. It was a good strategy, until Anakin kicked Vanto across the jaw, temporarily rendering him unconscious. This brought Plagueis into the fight, rushing forward with his saber staff, and the two engaged in a close quarter combat. Anakin caught a glimpse at his face and recognized the Mun as a banker from a few times he'd seen him on Coruscant, which only motivated Anakin in the fight. Both were masters at lightsaber combat, and the intensity of the duel increased. Vanto rejoined the fight and came at Anakin from the other side. Now pinched, Anakin had to focus on 2 masters of the dark side at once. There was no longer the opportunity for Anakin to attack, as Vanto kicked his saber out of his hand, as Plagueis hit him in the chest with Sith lightning. Anakin went hurling back against the wall, and Vanto rushed forward, over-eager, raising his lightsaber to deal the final strike. But in this moment, his over-eagerness made him blind to his surroundings, as a purple lightsaber appeared through his chest, straight through his heart. The wielder of said blade, Anakin's master Mace Windu. Windu had regained consciousness and focused on his Vapid technique, and used this to overcome the dark side's influence on the virus and temporarily nullify its effects. Vanto collapsed to the floor, and Anakin's blade returned to his grasp, and the 2 Jedi rushed at Plagueis. The Sith Lord was on the back foot, but together, both Jedi activated their Vapid, connecting to the dark side in Plagueis and using it against him. The Sith Lord was good, and Windu realized, probably stronger than Palpatine when he fought him in the original timeline. He's lucky it wasn't this Mun he was facing, but together, the 2 strongest Jedi disarm Plagueis, and instead of arresting the Sith this time, Windu plunges his lightsaber through his body as Anakin removes Plagueis' head from his shoulders. The 2 of them act instantly and get a hold of the gas canisters on their belts. They rush to the mechanical room of the temple and hook them up to the temple's ventilation system. They utilize the mechanical droids to duplicate the virus through the pipe system to help maximize its distribution and its effect. They breathe a sigh of relief as they head back up to the council chamber to find everyone had regained consciousness once again. The panic was over as they detail what happened to the entire council, the Jedi virus, the Sith, and how Anakin and Windu had defeated them. The aftermath of the Jedi virus took weeks to sort out. The Senate was informed of this plot, and Plagueis, now outed as Hago Damask, and Vice Chancellor Jarek Vanto had their dealings and lives investigated thoroughly for their crimes against the Jedi Order. Their business and political dealings were exposed, and whatever factions they held lost all support. The Jedi suffered minimal losses, a few younglings and Padawans not surviving the effects of the virus, but ultimately it didn't last long enough to have any catastrophic effects on the Order. After this, Anakin is invited into the council chamber to stand in front of them all. It's deemed that he truly was the chosen one, and together alongside his master, had defeated the Sith once and for all, and he's offered a seat on the Jedi Council. He sits down, taking his position between Jedi Masters Qui-Gon Jinn and Dooku. With the Sith now fully defeated, Windu was at peace. A couple days later, Windu sat thinking in the temple gardens as Anakin approached him. Mace studied his apprentice before him and saw another Anakin, the one who had stood against him with eyes burning yellow, the one who had taken his hand from his wrist and struck him down. This memory of the past Anakin was etched deep inside Windu and had been a wound that he thought would never heal. But now, looking at the man before him, Windu realized he had spent years forging someone different. This Anakin was a true protector of the Order, and together they had forged a bond neither had expected to grow so deep. Windu told Anakin that he forgives him, in his mind speaking to the Anakin of the past, rather than his apprentice in front of him from this timeline. The bitterness that had lingered for so long seemed to dissolve and be replaced by pride and even affection. Windu stepped forward and pulled Anakin in for a firm embrace. When they separated, Anakin looked confused for a moment but thanked his master, saying he could not have done it without him. Months later, Windu sat cross-legged beneath the glow of the temple lights. When he first entered this second life, he had fallen, believing he had failed. But now, the same thought rose in his mind. No, he thought he had failed, but instead he had learned. He had trusted, and he had changed. He opened his eyes to see Anakin in the distance, surrounded by younglings, their laughter carrying through the evening air. The city beyond burned with light, but here in the gardens there was peace. The sun dipped below the skyline, and Mace closed his eyes once more. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, he felt certain that the future of the Jedi was in good hands. Hey guys, over at Fantasy Sabers, for the entire month of August, we're giving away a free The Sun Deluxe edition with every Saber order. We offer the best NeoPixels on the market, so grab one for yourself. Please leave your video ideas in the comments, and may the Force be with you.